Hi there Ram owners. Today in our 2019 Ram 1500 we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Demco's Air Force One supplemental braking system. Your supplemental braking system is one of 5 main components you'll need when flat towing your vehicle behind your motorhome. In addition to your braking system, you'll also need your base plate, which gives you the connection point on your vehicle to hook up your tow bar, your tow bar, which provides the connection between your base plate and your motorhome, your safety cables, which is a supplemental connection in addition to your tow bar, and your diode wiring, which takes all the motorhome lighting signals and sends them to the back of your vehicle so people behind you will know your intentions when going down the road. This particular supplemental braking system here is designed for motorhomes that have air brakes. The connection that you see here is actually tied into the air brake system on our motorhome and provides an air signal back to our supplemental braking system to activate the brakes. It's truly proportional with this air supply, so that way the harder you press your brakes in the motorhome, the air varies depending on that brake pressure there, which allows the brake pressure that your vehicle is applying to its brakes to match that of the motorhome. So you can see here that when I press the brake in my motorhome, it's going to apply the actuating cylinder located on the brake back in our vehicle. Additionally, you'll also see the light illuminate that's located on the back side of your mirror. This light only illuminates when the reed switch located on the pedal has depressed the brake pedal, so you know for sure that the brakes are being depressed in your vehicle. You can see this usually by looking through the rear view camera in your motorhome. It's able to apply the brakes properly using the operating unit here located inside the vehicle under the hood. It does this by taking air from the motorhome like we discussed earlier and sending it out to that actuator on the pedal. But in addition to that, it also pulls vacuum on our vacuum brake booster, so that way it's applying that brake pedal as if it had power brakes, just like you were driving it normally. There are 2 wires coming out of our unit here that go to our breakaway switch, so that way in the event of a catastrophic disconnect, the system will activate, helping your vehicle come to a safe stop. Your breakaway switch is located here at the front of the vehicle, and it comes with a cable that allows you to connect it here on the breakaway switch and the other end to the back of the hitch on your motorhome. So if you did have that disconnect, this cable would pull the pin, applying the brakes. Now this is a bit of an involved installation, I'm not going to lie to you, but you're going to be happy with the results when it's done. It integrates so seamlessly in the vehicle. When you're driving the vehicle around, you almost don't even know that it's on there, but it's always there and ready to go, so whenever you want to hook up to your motorhome, you just make those connections and you're all set. Let's go over the installation together so you can have that confidence to do it at home. We'll begin our installation by mounting all of our main components. The first thing we're going to mount is the largest component, which is our operating unit, and we've positioned that on the driver's side by mounting it to the top of the fuse box here. Our box fits almost perfectly on top of our fuse box. The flanges that go off the side of your box on each side, it did take a vise and set it in there and bend those so they're down. You can bend it with a pair of pliers, whatever, just so it wraps around the side. And we did that on the other side as well. We can still remove our fuse box cover here, so if we need to access the fuses, no big deal. We can just flip that right on over. And if we look on the inside of our box here, you can see the holes that we drilled, and we ran a zip tie through the holes and through the box to hold it in place. We can then, once you've got those drilled out and zip tied, and all I did when I bent those ears, I just marked it with a marker and then drilled the holes, and then I was able to put the zip ties in. We can snap that back in place. Now we're going to move on towards the inside where we're going to mount our actuating cylinder. This will mount here on the inside onto your brake pedal on the driver's side. We attached it to the brake pedal using the included hardware. This comes pre-attached to the cylinder, so you just want to take those nuts off, take this plate off. The studs stay on the actuator side and they're threaded into it so they won't come out. Slide it over your brake pedal, put the plate on it, and then retighten the nuts. Now with these, I don't use a tool to tighten them down. I just use a socket and then tighten it by hand using the socket. No ratchet or wrench is necessary, because if you bend it too much, it can be loose on there, and you can get it pretty tight with just doing it by hand like that. I mean, here I can't even move it. Then at the back of our cylinder, there is a cable that comes out of it. Anchor point needs to be attached to the firewall, so I did have to cut some of the carpet out back in here, so that way we could get a flush mount up against the firewall, and then we just used the included self-tapping screw to mount that to the firewall. Now it is important that you put this so it's a straight line from the back of your cylinder. So you want to just kind of look at it and see when you push the pedal down here that the back of the cylinder goes straight towards your anchor point. It's important that it's straight, otherwise it could rub on the actuator towards the back and potentially break the cable and wear out the back of the actuator. Once you've got it all mounted up, you want to pull the cable through and you loop it just like we got there. And you want to leave a little bit of slack there. You can see we can pull the cylinder because we don't want the cable to be keeping tension on our brake pedal holding it down. So you want to make sure you got that little bit of slack. And then on top here, there is a set screw that you'll tighten down to hold the cable in place. Use a 5/32 Allen key to tighten it down. And it's important not to over tighten it because you could potentially damage the cable, which could cause it to break. From what I've found through experience is that if you tighten it down until the set screw is flush with the top of the anchor, that's usually a pretty good place to start. That usually tightens it plenty and keeps it from pulling out. Also on the inside, we'll mount the LED that comes in our kit, and it just sticks to the back side of your mirror using the included double-sided tape. Then route the wiring up above your headliner, down the headliner. Once you get here, you can tuck it behind the plastic panel and then run it down the panel. You may need to pull your weather stripping back a little bit to get it down. And we just ran it down that siding behind the weather stripping all the way down the side until we reached this panel here. From here, we just routed it down to the floorboard where we were able to make our connections. I tucked the wiring up behind it. And with wiring, the excess we just left back there. There's two wires that come off of your LED, the black and the red that you see here. The other wires you're seeing over here are coming from the reed switch on our actuator. So you can go ahead and put that on now as well. This just slides into your actuator, and there's a set screw there with a very small flat-bladed screwdriver. You can tighten it down inside of here. Then I just routed the wiring over here where we can make those connections. We're now back outside at the front where we needed to mount our air connection point. This is going to accept air from the motorhome, and it sends that air to our operating unit. We got this mounted up by drilling a hole in the bumper here, and then we used a long bracket to get it attached. We also mounted our breakaway switch to that as well, and we drilled the same size hole. I used a step bit to bring it up to the appropriate size that looked as clean as possible. I believe it's about 7/8 of an inch, but again, a step bit's a great way to do it, so that way you can just slowly build it up bigger and bigger until it fits perfectly. We'll lift it up now and show you the bracket on the back side. Here you can see the bracket that I mounted up. This is a long bracket. You can pick those up here at Etrailer.com. It's kind of a universal bracket that's often used for mounting 7-way connectors at the back of your vehicle, but it works great for this application because the only metal piece on our ram here, going behind our bumper, sits pretty far back away from the plastic where we mounted it. So this way we can extend it all the way forward, and then we use the included hardware to drill out holes and then mount our air connection right to it. And then on the other side, we mounted our breakaway switch and we drilled a hole for that. What I recommend doing to get this all to fit like we did here is start by drilling the holes in your plastic bumper, stepping those up and fitting the components in there. Then once they fit in the holes pleasantly to where you like it, hold it in the hole, hold your long bracket up here, and then get a second set of hands, or if you can hold them both with one hand, and then mark through the bracket here onto the long bracket with a paint stick. So that way where you know to drill the holes for this bracket, so that way it lines up and it's going to sit on your bumper properly. Then do the same thing with the breakaway switch. You can just hold that up there, mark for the hole, and then you can drill it out. So that way everything's going to fit just like you want it to. With all of our components mounted up, we just need to start connecting everything together. We're going to start here at our operating unit. There's two wires that come off of it. It doesn't matter which one you use when you're making these connections. They're both black, they look the same. One's going to go to power and the other one's going to go to your breakaway switch. So if you look over here, we've got the orange wire coming from our breakaway switch. And we've also got the blue wire coming from our breakaway switch. The blue wire coming from the breakaway switch down here is connected using a heat shrink butt connector to one of the black wires coming off of our unit. Again, it doesn't matter which one of the two, just pick one and connect it to the blue wire. Your kit's going to come with regular butt connectors. We've upgraded to heat shrink butt connectors for all of our connections that are outside the vehicle, as this will keep out moisture, ensuring a long-lasting connection. The other black wire coming off of here is just routed over to ground. So we just went down the side of the battery here, came up right here, crimped on one of the ring terminals that comes in our kit, and connected it to the battery negative post here. Now, I do recommend on vehicles that have a battery sensor here, before you disconnect any of your battery cables, disconnect this sensor. There's a little tab right here. Pull it out. Because when you're disconnecting these, it's possible that there's a small arc that can occur which could potentially damage the sensor. So just go ahead and unplug it beforehand. Once you've made all of your connections, don't forget to plug it back in. The other wire coming from our breakaway switch, the orange and black here, is going to connect to power. Now, we don't want to connect anything directly to our battery positive without having some sort of fuse protection in it. So here's the fuse harness that comes with our kit. It's going to be looped when you get it, so just go ahead and cut it in half. One side you're going to strip back and attach a ring terminal to it and attach it to the battery post here. And the other side, we're going to connect to that orange and black wire coming from our breakaway switch. Now you'll notice here that there's also a brown wire coming out of that. This is going to go inside the vehicle because we do need power for that LED indicator that we mounted. So this is a great time to go ahead and use the brown wire that comes in the kit, which is just a coil of brown wire, and attach it to here as well. I recommend that you leave the fuse out. I've got mine in right now because I've completed all my connections, but you want to make sure it's not in when you're making your connections and you put it in at the very end so you don't accidentally cause any shorts. We're now back on the inside where we're going to connect our LED. You can see I've got the brown wire here. I coiled up the excess because you have plenty of excess LED wiring as well, and I don't recommend that you cut the LED wire, so you just bundle that up. You can tuck it behind this panel. So from our LED, we have two wires. They come out of the LED harness here, and you've got a red and a black. The red wire from your LED is going to connect to the black wire coming from your reed switch's harness. Your reed switch harness is here. It has three wires, black, blue, and brown. The blue wire is going to attach to the black wire coming from your LED switch, and then there's a third wire that also needs to attach to those. So you can see I've got the blue and the black going to one side of the butt connector, and on the other side I've used some of the black wire that comes with your kit, and I've just run that to ground. It actually just runs right up here, and I attached a ring terminal to it that comes with the kit and used a self-tapping screw to run it into the beam right up here to get that ground. We made that connection here. And then lastly, we want to crimp the brown wire that we routed from the battery to the brown wire that's coming from our reed switch harness. We've now completed all the connections electrically for our system, so we can zip tie all that up and hide those. We're now going to move on to making the airline connections. Coming off of our cylinder, you'll have a quick connect for your airline here, and just take that and poke it in there. Since it is a quick connect, it just pushes in and locks in place. You can't take it out unless you press it on the release there. We're going to route that over to the driver's side here, and then we route it back and up through the grommet located in the firewall. We're now outside the vehicle on the driver's side in the top corner here. Our brake booster is just over here, and we're right here, and that's where our grommet's going to be located. It's kind of directly behind your battery on the firewall. It is pretty difficult to see due to all the wiring that's routed there, but you do have plenty of room to really kind of get in there, get your hands down there and grab it. It's just difficult to see it. We then routed it down here along the battery with our brown wire, because the brown wire went through the same grommet, over here to the air out from our unit. Then we're going to now do our air in connection. The air in connection is going to come out of our box, so just poke it in there and run it down to the air fitting that we mounted at the front of our vehicle. It plugs into the quick connect fitting located on the back of this valve. We'll now move on to the vacuum connection coming off of our box. You're going to use the larger diameter hose that comes in your kit here. Cut a small piece, about 1.5 to 2 inches, and connect the one-way check valve that comes in your kit with the black side facing towards the unit, like we have here. On the other side, we're going to then run the hose down over to a 3-way T-fitting. And this is our factory connection right here. Our factory connection goes from this plastic line coming from our booster to the rubber hose which pokes down onto your intake manifold here. So you can just take that hose, your factory hose, and pull it off of the intake. Just be careful, kind of twist it back and forth, it'll pull right off. And then you can, I trimmed some of it off because it is about that long, your factory hose. So I trimmed a little bit of it down so this wasn't sticking up so high. And slide the T-fitting in there. I did use a hose clamp to just ensure, because this hose was a slightly larger diameter than this. I believe that's because this is a SAE hose and this one's metric. When your T is slid up in here, you'll make the connection to your operating unit coming out of one side. The other side of your T, you'll then cut a small piece. Place another check valve in. This time we want the white side to face towards our operating unit and the black side to face down towards the engine. And then another short piece you're going to cut out of your hose that comes in your kit, and then attach that back to your intake manifold. Since the two hoses are such a similar size, the standard size hose here is going to slide right on there and fit even more snug than your factory hose did, so you'll be fine there. Our factory hose that runs back here, it does kind of want to hit on your cover here over your engine, so you can take some of the hose that you have left, the excess, and just cut a small piece, cut a slit down one side, and that way you can wrap it around your factory plastic hose and put a zip tie on it, so that way you're not going direct contact into your cover. So there's no actual airline connection or anything here. I just put this on here for protection to protect our factory hose, because it does put it at a little bit of a different angle due to the slightly longer length that we've made here with the T being in place. We've now moved over to our motorhome. We're going to mount all the components on there and then get those connected. The main component on your motorhome is going to be your air tank and relay valve here. This is all one piece that comes pre-assembled onto the bracket. So you just need to mount the bracket into your motorhome. So you'll want to find a location where you've got enough space to mount it, and you don't want to put the bottom of the relay valve here, you don't want to have that facing up. Ideally you want it facing down like we have it, but you could also have it coming off to the side. Common mounting locations are going to be on the chassis underneath or in a compartment like we have here. We now need to tap into the air brake system on our motorhome. We're going to need two different air ports. One is your metered air, which is located here, and one is your supply air, which is this one here. Now your motorhome is likely going to be different, so you're going to have to determine which one of those is the right hose on your motorhome. Some tips to help you find that: your supply air is going to have air all the time when there's air pressure in your system. So to be safe, you'll want to start by removing all the air from your system, and an easy way to do this is to just pump the brake pedal on your motorhome until all the air is exhausted. Then you can come back here and disconnect the hose, start your motorhome up, and feel if air is coming out of the hose, because if your system's empty, when you start your motorhome, it's going to try to recharge the system with air, and since you've disconnected the hose, there's going to be an air leak there, and you want to see if you feel that air leak. It's also a pretty large hose. You can see here in the comparing it to the size of my finger, and the quick connect fitting here is what we use to connect it. It comes with your kit. So a good idea is to take your quick connect fitting and hold it up to the hose to make sure too that it looks like it's the right size. You can see this is the factory quick connect fitting, and this is the one that came with our kit here, and if you look, they're identical in size. Your metered air, you can do the similar thing where you can verify that the size of the hose looks like it's going to fit in your valve. Now your metered air though is going to be different. This one would have air pressure on it all the time, so that's why we wanted to remove the air pressure first, disconnect it, and then fire it up to see if air comes out. With this one here, air only is present on this hose when the brake pedal is pressed, then air shoots through this hose. So you'll want to remove all the air pressure again, because you don't want to disconnect any hoses while you have air pressure in there, because it could potentially be dangerous. Then disconnect the hose that you suspect to be your metered air and start your motorhome up. The system should be able to charge up with air. It should not have any air coming out of it with the motorhome just idling. Once the air pressure has started to charge up, you can then have a second person press and release the brake pedal and see if every time they do that, that air shoots out of this hose. If it does, then you've got the right hose. You can then just simply cut the hose once you've determined you got the right ones and place your quick connect valve in between. And the T here coming off of it uses the same size airline that we were using on our vehicle side. So you can go ahead and poke that airline in here and do the same thing with your supply air valve. You see there it does have a small end on it coming out of the T for the 1/4 inch airline as well. poke some in this one, and then you're going to route these hoses towards the rear of the vehicle, or where you mounted your air tank that we had mounted there at the back. So we routed our hoses down the frame rail, going back to that air tank. Here are the two lines that we routed to the back from those fittings up at the front. The larger fitting, which was the supply air, that hose is going to route back and plug into the air tank here. The smaller fitting, which was the metered air, is going to plug into the top of the relay valve here on the 90-degree fitting. We've got one more air line that we need to connect. This one is pre-connected when you get the unit. So the last one we need to concern ourselves with is the one coming out of the bottom of the relay valve here. And this is the output that goes to the connection point at the back of your motorhome. So we're going to route this hose down towards the back, and we're going to find an appropriate mounting location for our female quick connect air fitting. And we're just used the two self-tapping screws that came with the kit, and we just ran it down to the top of our hitch here. And that air line coming out of the bottom of the relay valve just plugs into the back of this fitting. This is the connection point between our motorhome and our vehicle. And that completes our installation of Demco's Air Force One supplemental braking system on your 2019 Ram 1500.